Uh, Chair Kupiak, we're on the air whenever you're ready to begin.
I'm not the chair.
I'm sorry. Wow, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Chair Puliche, my apologies.
Okay, no problem. Shall we call the meeting to order and begin? How about, can we go to,
The Pledge of Allegiance.
yes, that's what it was. I was looking at the Ukraine Pledge of Allegiance, but it's the wrong one. All right,
Right one for today.
yes,
Thank you.
I pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
United
of
States
of the United
States
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation.
nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice
Justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. Okay. David?
All right, moving on to our TV coverage announcement. Montecito Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County and Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, San Maria, and Orca areas. Rebroadcast of Montecito Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays after 5 p.m. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Moving on to roll call, Commissioner Keller,
present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Kupiak,
Present.
Commissioner Senauer,
Here,
and Chair Puliche.
Here, thank you.
Thank you.
So should we move on to the reconsider the circumstances of the COVID-19 emergency?
Good morning, Chair, members of the commission. Staff is continuing to recommend that the commission make the findings as outlined on this motion and then provide a motion to continue to hold the meetings remote on number 4.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Anyone? Yes. Ms. Keller?
Yes, I move that we accept staff's recommendation to continue to meet remotely.
Okay.
I second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
We need a roll call.
Roll
Yes.
Oh, yes, I guess we do. How can I forget that 500 times later? Sorry, David.
No, hey, it's I appreciate the enthusiasm. Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiak,
Aye.
Commissioner Senauer,
Aye.
and Chair Puliche.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, moving on. Commission Secretary. The status report.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Looking at the status of the agenda today, we have one item, which is a status update of the Highway 101 widening project. When we get to that item, I'll provide a brief overview and framework of the discussion today. And then item number 12, I know this always is confusing, but there's no action for item number 12. It's noticing only, so we don't need to take any action on item number 12. Other than that, we're ready to proceed with the standard agenda, and I can move to the projection report if you'd like, Mr. Chair.
Do we not have public comment? Is that later?
That would be later. After the projection report, then we can invite. the
Oh,
public.
that's right. Okay, go right ahead, Mr. Wilson.
So our next scheduled hearing is April 20th. And looking at the action we just took related to remote hearings, we may be inviting you to have a special hearing at the end of 30 days, which would be April 16th or before, so we could remain remote on April 20th, which is our next scheduled hearing. I will work with Mr. Villalobos and the chair to schedule that and provide further information on that. But our next scheduled hearing is April 20th. There's one item on it for right now, and depending on the status update that we have later today, there could be another item on that, depending on information that we get. And I'll go into that more later on the standard agenda. And then our next hearing after that is May 18th. And as of right now, there are no items projected for May 18th. So that concludes the projection report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Villalobos, do we want to introduce the public comment stage here of our meeting?
Sure thing, Mr. Chair. So this is the public comment portion of our agenda where we invite members of the public to speak on items not on today's agenda. And I believe that all of our speakers did sign up for item number 1 on our standard agenda, but I did want to make that offer to anyone present. If you want to speak on something not on today's agenda, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I think that means we have no public comment for this particular section of our agenda. I'm sorry, we have one hand now. So again, if you're here to speak on the 101 item, now is not the time. We'll get to that later. But Lynn Larson, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself. Lynn, can you hear us? So, Ms. Larson, if you'd like to give comment on something not on today's agenda, I see that you unmuted your mic. Go ahead and start your comments whenever you're ready. I'm not sure if Ms. Larson is having issues with her audio. Mr. Chair, not sure how you'd like to proceed. We can leave that open if you'd like.
Yeah, we can come back to her. Maybe she can speak when the other public comments are made.
Okay.
She can find a way of getting through. Okay, so
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt, sorry.
Go ahead.
Moment of clarity. I'm based on my previous comments on the projection report, I think it would be a good idea if we set a special hearing on April 13th. I apologize, Mr. Villalobos, I sent you a message, but I'm jumping the gun. If we could set a special hearing on April 13th, just to be able to make the findings to stay remote for April 20th, and then we'll just have our regular hearing on April 20th. The parameters are that the motion you made today is good for 30 days. And as long as those parameters are still in effect on April 13th, we could make those findings and stay remote on the 20th.
are you looking for comments from the commission, or I'm good with it as the chair, but
As long as we have a majority that could show up on April 13th, just for a brief
okay.
meeting to make those findings, so that way we can stay remote for another 30 days.
Yes. Comments by anyone? Donna, Susan, anybody?
Fine for me. I can do it.
Do we need it? Excuse me. Do we need any kind of a motion, or shall it? We do. Okay, then I make the move. I move that we have a special hearing on Wednesday, April 13th.
Okay. Commissioner Sinauer.
Yeah, I second.
Okay. Thank you. So do we want to take a vote there for that meeting, David?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Keller and Commissioner
Aye.
Sinauer for making those motions.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiak,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinauer,
Aye.
and Chair Police.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. So we move on to number 9, Planning Commissioner's informational reports. Anybody have a hand up? Yes. Commissioner Sinauer?
Hi, just to notice that I generally go down southbound or eastbound on 101 at San Ysidro. There's often a backup actually onto the number 2 lane of those waiting to go up the on-ramp to San Ysidro. And it can be quite dangerous. I have written their trucks, etc., into the number 2 lane. And I have written both Kirsten Ayers and Fred Luna, and they were appreciative of the concerns, and they will be monitoring, etc., a little more vigilantly. There's no camera there, and the expense would be too great to put one there. So they're hoping with construction, things will work out. But my recommendation was to revert back to a safety officer as they had when Sheffield was not in use, which really improve the flow, the traffic flow. And I guess that would be a consideration of a few hours in the morning or whenever needed. But it is a safety concern. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Commissioner Keller?
I was only going to second Commissioner Senauer's comments because I don't know what, I guess that they felt there would be no need for a safety officer if Sheffield was functional, but there is still the same amount of backup because there was hardly any freeway exit at Sheffield. And with school starting and construction starting, and there's a slight curve just as you come around the freeway to where cars are stopped. So if there's any kind of recommendation that we can make, or anyone here from that can pass on that recommendation, it's very dangerous, as is the section of freeway south of Sheffield going through Summerlin into Carpinteria. The barriers that are on either side of the freeway are an incredible hazard. And I understand they've had a number of accidents in that area. And I myself find it extremely difficult to drive, especially in the evening. And I'm wondering if there's anything that could be, any recommendation or request that could be forwarded from us for the safety of Montecito residents. Is that something that we could do, Chair? Sorry, Mr. Wilson, is that anything we can do or act upon, even though it's not on the agenda?
So my general recommendation is we would have to agendize it if we wanted a discussion, if it's not on the agenda.
Okay, might it be part of the 101 update today? Could we somehow manage to bring that in, because it is all a part of what's going on with the freeway construction?
So when I give you the framework on what we're going to discuss today, I think it'll answer that question. But I would say generally no. We probably need to agendize that for floor discussion.
Okay,
Well,
Chair Pulice, then I recommend we do that. I think we all share these same concerns.
Yeah, we don't have to, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Wilson, but I think that this could be passed along, and it has, by Commissioner Senauer. That should be enough for them to possibly decide whether or not they should do it or not. I would think that we don't have to have a vote of all five of us to them to get the idea we have trouble there, and it's pretty obvious. But yes, we could agendize it, and I have no problem with that if we want to try to put that on our next month's agenda.
I'm Sharon, Commissioner Keller, based on, I think Chair Pulice has a good suggestion. Ms. Liu, the project planner, is on today, and so she could pass that information on instead of having to agendize it. So I'll work with Ms. Liu, and she can pass on that information.
Yeah. That was not on the original design to have a special exit ramp, but I believe that it's on it now. It's a question of building it. But in the meantime, if we have a problem, the cure is what we well know of, and that's having some kind of law enforcement to move traffic. But we'll talk to her about that.
Yeah, I could forward the communication from Kirsten, CC to Fred, and it could be part of public record too. David, is that okay? Forward it to you, and then you can distribute as needed.
Sure, happy to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have informational reports, individual commissioners?
No.
Okay, well, I have spoken to Public Works, Scott McAlpin, Dust Williams, as well as our District 1 rep on the as supervisor, and numerous times Mr. Wilson regarding this last and only topic on the agenda. So without going into detail, I did talk to all these people regarding the issue. So moving on from there, anybody else have a comment? I guess not. So we can move on. Let's see, do we have the minutes from February 16th to consider? David?
Yes, that is correct. So
All right.
I'd emailed those out with the agenda last
Right.
week.
I have no problem with them, but is anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Sinauer.
Yeah, thanks very much. I would just like to offer an amendment to my comments regarding, I believe it's in the second to last sentence, when I referenced the possible consolidation of MWD and MSD. The last sentence left, we'll vote on the matter in the coming month. If I didn't review the tape, but if in fact I said that, I misspoke. And so I would like to just delete that sentence. Thanks.
Understood.
Anybody else to see? Any? I guess not. Okay, well, can you make that modification for us? And I think we are good for a vote.
Thank you, Chair Felice. I think we need a motion and a second first.
Yes, that would be helpful. All right.
Would like to move to approve this.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Yes, okay. Voice vote.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinauer,
Aye.
and Chair Felice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. So. So I guess we're ready to go to our standard agenda. Highway 101 briefing.
Mr. Chair, I think Director Plowman is ready to do the director's report before we go to that.
I guess I'm very anxious today for some reason. All right. All right.
You can't skip over me.
No, I can't. We got to let the boss speak. That's what Jeff says.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission.
Good morning.
I don't have a whole lot to report today. Just wanted to let you know that we are continuing with our appointment system at the public counter, and that seems to be working well. People are taking advantage of it. We are going to be looking at expanding those hours, and we will keep you posted on the opening of the offices. We're still, taking measured steps to make sure that we don't have a resurgence of the virus. So hopefully we're going to be going back to normal here in the near future. I wanted to let you know that the board took action last week on the Exxon trucking project. They denied the permit for that. So that project has reached its conclusion, and they will have to wait until the pipeline is up and running in order to move any oil out of their facilities along the Gaviota coast. Yesterday, the board took action on the Hawker Philippides lot line adjustment, and they upheld the appeal and approved the lot line adjustment. In terms of future items that the Montecito Planning Commission will have interest in at the board, that is the LRP work program, which is on the 4th of April. And then if you're interested in following the budget process, we will be at the budget hearings start the 11th of April, and planning and development's functional group is going to be up on the 12th of April. And so you can monitor that if you have an interest in it. And I think with that, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think Commissioner Keller has a question.
Yes. Mr. Keller.
Thank you. Because I am working very remotely today and don't have access to my notes, would you kindly remind us of the Philippides lot line adjustment and the basis for the appeal?
So the Hawker Philippides lot line adjustment came to the Montecito Planning Commission, I think back in November 2019, and then January 2020.
Yes.
And there was a vote of 2-2 on that, which resulted in the denial of the lot line adjustment. And the applicant appealed that to the Board of Supervisors, and the board approved the lot line adjustment.
And what was the adjustment, please, just so it's refreshed?
So there were, the landowner had 2 lots, and one of the lots was quite small, and the existing single family home straddled one of the lot lines. So in order to correct that situation, they wanted to adjust that line, increase the size of that lot, and reduce the size of the adjacent lot so that they were more even in size. And they didn't have that non-conforming problem with the building straddling the lot line.
And that was in the area of Montecito called, Commissioner Sena, are you going to refresh my memory? It
was the Arcady.
Arcady. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And the Arcady residents felt that this would not be
Yes.
consistent with their
Yes.
area and community plan.
Yes, I believe you were not present at the January meeting. And that's why it was a 2-2. That's my recollection. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but that's my recollection. Director Plowman, is that why it was 2-2?
I can't remember why. I don't think I was in the hearing.
Yeah,
I think
it
so.
was.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I was not
yeah.
present in the
Right.
January
Correct.
2020 meeting.
Correct.
So that's when it happened. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. And this is for refreshing my memory, as I say, because I wasn't there. Now, thank you. I wasn't there for the vote, and Commissioner Miller wasn't there at all. So thank you for going into those details, because it was a contentious issue. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Any other questions? Okay,
All
well,
right.
thank you. And I'm going to stick around for the next item, and so we'll be available if you need anything from me.
Okay, thank you. All right. So should we finally go to our only standard agenda item? Mr. Villalobos, are you ready?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I am happy to do so. I just wanted to acknowledge the waived hearing item on the agenda. There's nothing for the commission to do there. That's just a supplemental notice for the public. Moving on to our standard agenda, item number 1, the Montecito Planning Commission will receive a status update from the Planning and Development Department regarding the Highway 101 construction project. And I believe Ms. Liu is here for a presentation.
Good morning, commissioners. Before Ms. Liu speaks, she has a speech prepared. Just kidding. Sorry. Chair Palucci got me all excited about speeches, so I was ready. So I wanted to do a brief explanation introduction today on the item. Chair Palucci and I and Director Plowman, we've met several times over the last week. So I kind of want to lay the framework of the discussion today and set expectations. So that way, going in, we all kind of know what the expectations are and what we can do today as far as the item on the agenda. So we invited Ms. Liu to attend. She's a supervising planner over the project, and she's working with staff. The planner is Chris Smigel. I apologize for misspeaking earlier. Ms. Liu is doing an excellent job as supervising planner, and we congratulate her on her promotion. So in regards to setting expectations for today, so the item was placed on the agenda today in concert with conversations with Chair Palucci, and the reason for is to provide a status update on the project. And that's where Ms. Liu is going to come in and provide the current status of where the project is, what we're waiting for, and what direction has been provided to the applicants, which is Caltrans in conjunction with SBCAG. On that note, I would caution the commission on providing any substantive or general comments on the project, as currently we're waiting for the application to be resubmitted to the department for further processing. And Ms. Liu will go further into detail on that. So today really is just a quick check-in on what is the status, what is pending, and what are the next steps that we foresee in the horizon. In concert with Mr. Chair Pliche, there is a process in the procedure manuals that allows for projects to come to the commissions as a conceptual review. And that occurs once a project is resubmitted and we actually have an application in. So our recommendation is that we hold back any substantive comments and wait for that to be agendized as a conceptual review item, where we notice it, we invite the applicants in, and we can provide, at that time, we'll have other cautionary advisory messages for you. But at that time, you can provide, the commission can provide general comments and questions on the application material, provide some feedback. And the next step after that, as Ms. Liu will indicate, we will be coming back to the commission for the final review and recommendation on the project. So this project is going to be a review and recommendation action by the commission at a later time. And at that time, the commission then can weigh on the merits of the project and the application and provide any feedback and recommendation to the county planning commission. So really we're talking about a 3-step process. Today is just a quick check-in, status. We'll come back, agendize it for a conceptual review. You can provide high-level general comments, feedback on the project that's on a conceptual level, and then we'll come back finally for a review and recommendation, and then you can provide your substantive comments at that time. So that's kind of the framework. So again, managing expectations. If you provide a lot of questions to us today, we're going to say we don't have the answers. So we'll say wait till we actually have an application in. So that's where we're at today, and I'll let Chair Pliche provide any further comments on that.
I want to make this comment, Mr. Wilson. The fact that there was a public and Zoom meeting that has caused some uproar in the community, I guess it's been about 3 weeks or so, regarding sound walls and the drainage systems of the freeway. I think it may be fair game for us to ask the questions. I know you might not want to, but I think this is a time-sensitive project. And if there's going to be an abrupt modification to the plan that we all believe we were going to get 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever, meaning approved, sound walls and the like, do you think it's inappropriate for us to say anything regarding our surprise and the fact that we are observing the modification and curious on where that's going at this moment, or we just have to just let them plow through with what they want to do without comments from us at this point?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And my recommendation is not to provide any questions or substantive comments today in that regard. And the forum for that would be that conceptual review. Application will come back in, then you can provide those early comments about the project direction or any feedback on the project at that time. So that's kind of the pause button to say, thank you for resubmitting, but that would still be early in the process. Right now, it's a pregame. They need to resubmit. And then once we get that application in, that would be the time for that conceptual review to ask those questions, share your dismay, share your concern. And I know this is important for the commission and the community, and we're aware of that. And that's why we've identified this process that allows for that to occur.
All right. I hear what you're saying. There's just human nature causes this. Yes, I see your hand. And I disagree with you, but I will respect your position and the rest of the board or commission. So Ms. Keller, you have a comment?
I do have a question of Mr. Wilson, but also just the reason I and we requested that this be on the agenda is because the public has had no opportunity for any kind of input at all. And so I know there are some speakers today and some letters today, and to exclude the public from this process is, I think, well, it's very disturbing. So I would just appreciate you say, Mr. Wilson, that the application needs to come in again. The application is from Caltrans, and it's for a modification of the original plan that was submitted to whom?
So Commissioner Keller, through the chair, I'll let Ms. Liu give the details as far as the application, what the application may contain. She has those details. And so I'll let her speak to that. And then I'll also invite Ms. Liu to talk a little bit more about the public process and how people can engage in the public process. What I just outlined with the conceptual review, that is a public process. We will agendize it like we normally do, give the 10-day notice. We'll have a hearing conceptually, and people can come and engage in the public process at that time
Thank
as
you.
well. So there's going to be some touch points for the public to come in, and I'll let Ms. Liu explain that, if that's okay, Commissioner Keller.
No, the only reason I'm speaking is because there is this perception in the community that basically Caltrans will do what Caltrans wants to do, and that there really isn't even any mechanism for the county to resist, or certainly not the public. So as long as Ms. Liu can make it clear that there is a point at which the county can weigh in and possibly deny the approval of the new application, that would be reassuring. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I think we'll have time after she speaks and for us to have, some controlled comments, ones that don't irritate our beloved secretary. So anyway, shall we get started with the comments from our Nicole? Jeff, we want to let her speak?
I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, go right ahead, please.
All right. Good morning, Chair Pliche and members of the commission. It's nice to see you today. I'm here to give you a briefing regarding the Caltrans Highway 101 widening project. This is segment 4D, and it will extend through Montecito for 1.4 miles, adding a high occupancy vehicle or carpool lane in both directions. Currently, the status of the application for this segment of the highway widening project is incomplete. What incomplete application means is that the final project design is still in flux and is still subject to change, and that there are outstanding items needed by staff in order to review the project for policy consistency as well as CEQA purposes. Staff has requested a number of pieces of information from the applicant, and they're working on all of that. However, because the application is incomplete, there's limited information we're able to provide today on some of the elements that I know you're interested in. However, after the application is deemed complete and staff has been able to make a preliminary assessment of the project, we will be bringing the project to your commission for review at a conceptual level, and again for a second meeting to receive comments on the project. Both of these meetings will be publicly noticed meetings that are open to the public, where we'll present the project details in great detail, and we'll be requesting comments from you, also taking comments from the public. After those two meetings with your commission and receipt of that information, which we will share with the applicant and take into our analysis of the project will again return to the Planning Commission as the regional decision maker on the project, who will take action on the project, and will be considering again public comments at that time and the input from your commission. I do understand that there are some questions in the community with regard to sound walls and flood danger. And at this point, what I can say on that topic is that planning staff and public works staff have requested hydrologic calculations from Caltrans, And Caltrans has indicated that they will be providing that information in the near future. They're actively working on it, and they're working collaboratively with staff on that issue. Once we have a stable project description, as I mentioned above, and a complete application, we will be returning to your commission, as I mentioned, for those meetings and for that feedback. And yeah, I'm available for additional questions or comments.
I raise my hand.
Commissioner Keller?
So, Ms. Lou, so it goes to the County Planning Commission for a decision or a recommendation, and then goes from them to the Board of Supervisors. And then the Board of Supervisors votes on whether or not to accept the project or deny the project or accept with modifications. Is that correct?
Chair and Commissioner Keller, the final decision maker for the project after obtaining comments from your commission is the County Planning Commission as a regional decision maker. It would only go to the board if the decision of the Planning Commission is appealed to the Board of Supervisors, at which point they would have the option to approve, deny, or approve with modifications, as you said.
So the project itself, the changes to the project or the project itself, with the deciding, you're just saying the decision maker is the County Planning Commission, and Caltrans would have to take their direction from that decision. Is that correct?
Chair Police and Commissioner Keller, we would first be bringing the project to your commission for a conceptual level review to obtain your comments and share those with the applicant. We'd then come to your commission for final comments to be forwarded on to the County Planning Commission. The County Planning Commission would then take action on the project, considering your comments, staff's presentation, additional public comment. And so they would take final action. And then if their decision were appealed for any reason, that would be the only circumstance where it would end up at the Board of Supervisors level.
No, I know you did say that. Thank you. But I'm just asking, so if the County Planning Commission denies the resubmitted application, that is a decision that Caltrans must take as a final decision.
Chair Police and Commissioner Keller, correct. Yes.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes.
And one other thing, if you please, at what level would the county, with planning, in terms of your passing or bringing the project back and forth, at what level would a change like this result in something like a requirement of a revised or updated environmental impact report?
So, Chair Police and Commissioner Keller, once we have a stable and finalized project description, one of the things that we'll be doing is reviewing the project for consistency with applicable policies and ordinance requirements. And then the other thing we'll be doing is we'll be looking at their environmental review. Caltrans has already prepared an environmental impact report for the full scope of the project. So what we'll be looking at is to see if what they're proposing, if the impact levels are the same in our professional opinion as what was analyzed in the EIR.
Thank you. And just one last question, because this is a small segment of the entire project, could there be an amendment to the EIR with regard to this small segment, or is there any way of breaking that down?
Chair Police and Commissioner Keller, there's a couple of different ways it could go. If we look at the EIR and look at the impact levels and feel that there is a need for clarification of a particular item, then there is the opportunity for us to request that Caltrans prepare an addendum to the EIR that isn't specific to geographic areas, as much as it is specific to impact levels that were analyzed in the EIR.
Thank you. I'm sure other people have questions, so I
Yeah.
appreciate your responses.
Commissioner
Okay.
Keller, through the chair, if I could just interject,
Yes.
sorry, Chair Felice.
ahead.
Just one clarifying item is the planning commission action is appealable. So depending on what that decision is, it could be appealed to the board by either the applicant and or a member of the public. So that would be how it would go to the board, is on an appeal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, we'll go to you next, please.
We appreciate your time and educating us about this. I'm in a learning mode right now, and I appreciate that. I'm a little unclear as to the project is being remitted for kind of a scope and redesign, and then public impact comes against this new scope and redesign. Am I understanding that properly?
You got
Chair-
that, Jeb? Go ahead. Or Nicole?
Chair and Commissioner Miller, if I may, I think what's happened with this project is it's gotten the attention of a lot of people earlier than most projects do. Normally, when a project's at this stage, at the incomplete level, it's not on the radar of the public or of commissioners usually. I think because Caltrans has done a lot of public outreach, the community is more aware of it. Typically there are shifts in the project during the incomplete stage of a project. So that's a common occurrence. And so I just wanted to mention that because that's a common occurrence, but normally at this stage, it hasn't risen to the level of the commission to consider, or even for the public to be as aware of it. So the typical process is that during the incomplete stage, there can be shifts in the project as we're gathering information, as the applicant is clarifying information for us. And then once we have what we call a complete project and a stable project description, that's when we begin our analysis. The other thing that's a little bit different with this project in terms of environmental review is the lead agency in this case is Caltrans, as opposed to the county being the lead agency for the purposes of environmental review. So the typical process that you're probably used to seeing is the county staff conducting the environmental review document after an application is deemed complete. In this case, because, and I apologize if I'm getting too technical.
No, I appreciate it.
In this case,
Something is in the details here. Yeah.
In this case, because Caltrans is the lead agency, they prepare the environmental document as the lead agency, and it's a large environmental document covering not only this segment but the other segments of the project. And so the process is a little bit different, and the presumption is that we will rely on the EIR. But as I said before, what we do is once we have a complete project description, county staff does take another look at that EIR and the project itself and the impacts that are presumed in the EIR to see if they're the same, or if there's a possible change. I want to be clear though that it's not any change that could cause an addition to an EIR. It's just changes that, and council might want to correct me or jump in on this, but it's just changes that are changing the significance level of a particular impact in a particular issue area. So it's not any change, it's specific types of changes. So yeah.
I appreciate what this is a little bit in my kind of baking it, and there's gathering the ingredients, and when you're gathering all the ingredients, people chiming in a lot isn't all that helpful. there's then a moment when like the ingredients come together and we're deciding what the cake is. And then that cake is in the oven. And while it's possible to make changes, once the cake is baking, it has a momentum of its own. And I'm trying to and so you've been very clear and articulate. Let me emphasize that point. It's just I'm new to this and not necessarily is that the concern of when is the right time for public input. What we don't want to do is have at the point when all the batter's mixed and it's about to go in the oven, it's like, well, what do you guys think? And it's kind of, and that's where a little bit wanting clarification about kind of, it's an incomplete project. It's going to be a complete project, and then we get public input. In my butchered metaphor of the cake, like when is the right moment for our community, which, as you know better than anyone, has a long and storied history of having strong opinions about the 101. When is the right point for that to happen, where it's we're still at the ingredients mixing stage, not at the let's get it in the oven stage?
So Chair Police and Commissioner Miller, if I could step in on that one. I'm sure Ms. Liu would have a great answer, but I couldn't let the analogy go.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
I had
Mr.
I had to participate in this analogy.
Yeah, to make it better, please.
No, it's great.
It wasn't great.
It was perfect. So using your analogy, as I discussed earlier, the time for the commission and members of the public to take a look at all the ingredients before the cake goes into the oven, as we put all the ingredients in the bowl and we're stirring it up, that's going to be that conceptual review that we talked about. We'll agendize it, we'll notice it, we'll invite the applicant to come in, and then you'll have that opportunity to look at the ingredients and provide feedback and comments in regards to the direction that it's going. And then the applicant will go back and they'll consider those comments and feedback, and they'll either make changes or they won't, and then we'll come back to the commission with whatever that final product is.
But Mr. Wilson, is that subsequent to the complete EIR? Because the EIR always seems to be a little bit like when you turn on the mixer.
So, and I'm going to let Ms. Liu jump in on that.
Okay.
This cake is a little bit different than the other ones because the EIR, the frosting or whatever you want to say on that cake is already done. So now our part of that process is to look at the EIR to see if the application is consistent with the EIR that was prepared on this project. So that's a little bit different, as Ms. Liu indicated. In this process, the environmental document's already done. Our job then is to determine that the application that's submitted remains consistent with the analysis that was already completed.
Before we go further, and I know that you our previous chair wants to speak, but if these modifications that we hear about are occurring and they don't affect CEQA, so that doesn't affect their environmental approval process, then we're still looking at more of a political comment, more of a community comment. And it does make it more difficult, Jeff, for us to enter into any kind of exchange that's meaningful the longer we wait. In fact, there's a time sequence. This is a sensitive project as far as getting funds soon for the next go around. And the fact that if this project needs modifications that they're talking about, they're going to want to go ahead and do it with or without our comments. So it is difficult for us to have an effect unless we get in on it as early as we can so that they have some type of enthusiasm to take a look at it. Because the longer we wait, the harder it is. So I don't necessarily agree with this process of sort of muzzling comments now, Jeff, but I appreciate your wish. But I think that our community is very nervous about this, and I'll stop there. And Nicole, if you would like to have comments from our past chair, Bob Kubiak, we can move to that. Are you good with that? Are you? Okay. All right, Bob.
Well, I have to echo a little bit of what Ron said. When we agreed to be on the planning commission, there's commissioners and chairs, we become pretty analogy. I mean, I want to make sure that Montecito gets some icing. I don't want a cake without icing, and I want to know why that's happening. Why did this get released to the press if it's not something that's being under consideration? I mean, it's been in the journal. So I think that, cat's out of the bag for comment at this point, as far as I'm concerned. I want them to know that our neighborhood, our residents are very concerned about this. There are people who are going to be impacted by the widening. There was an understanding of the kinds of mitigation measures that would be put in place. And now we're understanding that it's under consideration that those mitigation measures are going to be eliminated. And they may come up with a bunch of reasons why, but I mean, there are many ways to engineer a solution that would satisfy both requirements. And I know from my vantage point, that is an absolutely ironclad expectation on my part, that something has to be brought to the community that's acceptable. And just saying you're going to get a chain link fence and some hedges ain't enough. We get phone calls. People know they want us to make this comment publicly. So I'm concerned. Also, one of the comments that I want to make, if hydrological calculations are being requested, are they being requested for the adjacencies of the communities that are next to us? Because there has to be some kind of comparative analysis. It can't be just, oh, well, we studied this section of the Montecito freeway widening, and we've come to the conclusion that it's dangerous. Dangerous by comparison to what? So if the hydrological study isn't broad form, then I don't think it'll be acceptable to this commission. So, like I said, there's got to be some frosting on this cake.
Okay. Sinauer.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ms. Liu, for your presentation. Very appreciative, and our beloved Secretary Wilson, for your framing of this discussion before us. There's a lot going on here. It's like a vortex. And this community, as has been referenced many times, is very engaged in all that's before us. One of the issues that complicates things is messaging. And we, as has been mentioned, it's been in the press, etc. It's been before the MA. It's also come before MBAR. And Caltrans has given presentations to both, but I think that's where the confusion arises. If they go to MBAR and MBAR hears it, which they did a couple of weeks ago, it basically, again, causes the community to say, well, what's going on here? It's the cart before the horse is what we hear here today. And yet the presentations have been made, rather than say at MBAR, coming and having the applicant via, I believe it was Ms. Ayers, say, it's too early. We just can't come before you right now, and as has been positioned today. And I think that would have been a wiser, also with the MA, a wiser, more prudent approach to reference this project to the community. But the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. And we, going forward, I think have to support the parameters and that have been laid out today by our beloved secretary and I'm sorry, and Ms. Liu. And I think that coming back with the conceptual is an imperative, and it cannot be stressed enough. Where we have input, okay, it's the first bite truly of the apple. And I think that's where public opinion will come in a substantive way. and a way of great import. So I think all that's been laid out today has been very, very appropriate and fruitful. So I hope the community will, I hope this gets out into the press. The approach, the summary, the projection of how this truly, objectively, process-wise will go forward. So those are my comments. Ms. Lou, thank you very much. I'm sure you'll have more questions, but it's very grounded and measured and appropriate in process. And I think it's given good guidance to this community of how this will proceed. And the antecedent to this with different meetings through the MA and MBAR probably were a little premature. And unfortunately, that's the community has rallied around that without appropriate perception as to the reality. Whether it's a cake being baked or the ingredients or the icing, whatever. But I think the process you've outlined is very appropriate and very, very helpful for the community to understand. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, did you have another comment or your hands just?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, then Susan, you can go, then I will follow.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to, unfortunately, I jumped right in with my questions without thanking Ms. Lou, because I think what you did in terms of outlining the process was excellent. And I think, as I agree with Commissioner Senauer, the public perception is that these decisions have already been made. And so there's outrage and panic. And if indeed there is still an opportunity for meaningful input and for some influence over the decision that is made, that would be quite reassuring. And I think you have reassured people that that is still possible, because we have seen situations in which decisions that significantly impact the community that are made by Caltrans really haven't been, we haven't felt we've had the impact, influence, or input that we would like to have. So hopefully that's still an opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, and I also want to thank Nicole for her presentation. It was grateful to have it. I have a couple comments that I just have to get off. I've spoken many times to many people in the last month and actually years. You know, I have not been a proponent of this design to begin with, but I acquiesced and assisted for 8 or 9 months with the landscape, sound walls, barrier walls design process. And I was blindsided, as like most, about 3 weeks ago. However, I have been saying this, Jeff, and every chance I get over the last 3.5 years or so on this board or this commission, that I believe that we have an inadequacy regarding the storm system on the freeway. I've looked at it. You know, I have the fortunate or unfortunate knowledge of 45 years of building these freeways. And I have not seen one that has a depressed freeway under a bridge that did not have a fairly elaborate pump station with pumps that range from 50 horsepower to 2,000 horsepower, depending on the delivery of water. I know that the Caltrans is not excited and has not been over the course of 10 years to buy right away. But, you know, there's things like widening channels to the ocean that are not a long distance, but can be, you know, time consuming. The storm system itself would be a real difficult process as far as dealing with traffic management during the time frame it's being built. But all these things are important. You know, we did lose over 20 souls 4 years ago because of flooding. And, you know, global warming is not going away. Of course, we all know that. Sea level rising may have a situational effect on this freeway as well. I mean, ideally, you would not have a freeway subsurface from the shoreline of the ocean less than 1,000 feet away. It's just not something that we would do now. We have an example underneath the 101 at the garden, underpass. that has a really elaborate and very successful drainage system. And so we have examples of how we can do that, even just a few miles away. And so I really hope that the trouble with waiting and not having a comment, Jeff, is I've been in this position before, is that when we decide on a peer review for this work, who chooses it? Does Caltrans choose it? Does the county choose it? What kind of input do we have as far as can we be, can we watch and otherwise have some kind of participation in the process? Because if the process is all completed and they go, this is our final decision based on everything we've done, but there's not been anybody, any representation from the community going, well, if we did this, could we get sound walls? Well, yeah, you could, but we don't want to do this. So there's so many different variables. I've designed freeways of this size, and I know that you could probably come up with a half a dozen different ways of moving water off the freeway. You could put sound walls in probably most of the locations if you really wanted to. So there's so many things we can do, and I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but I'm frustrated myself knowing after all this time, when we were promised the freeway with sound walls, that after all this time, the word is out, we're not going to get it. And I think it's very depressing. I don't like it. I'm unhappy about it, but I'm likewise as unhappy with not having maybe a revised storm system in the freeway. I mean, what's changed in 4 years since the mudslides? What design change has been modified? I don't see any that I know of. And so we're living with the realities of pre-mudslide in our design, and nothing has had any effect, even 20 people dying that would modify that. So I don't know whether we're going to have any effect ourselves going forward. But I wish we could, and I'm saddened if we can't, but we won't rule it out. As Commissioner Keller did say, we should have a shot at it later, and hopefully we will, but I'm concerned that we won't. Anyway.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I
Go
just
right ahead,
wanted,
I'm finished.
yes, thank you. I just wanted to add something that we understand your concerns. And we are going to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide those in the appropriate forum. We will be working, Nicole Liu and Jeff and myself and Mr. Seawards and Chris Schmuckel will all be working on this, monitoring it. We will be coordinating with Public Works, so we have a good understanding of what's happening with respect to these flood issues. But we hear you, we understand the concern of the community. I'm sure they feel like it's sort of a bait and switch situation where they thought they were getting sound walls and all of a sudden it sounds like maybe they aren't. So I just want to assure you that we understand the commission's concerns and taking them very seriously, and that we will be back to give you your opportunity to make those comments in the right forum.
Okay. Can I ask you this question? The data that has been, I believe, moved to the county from Caltrans, they've turned over information. Will the county public works or flood control come before us at all? Or is it just going to be the Caltrans and SBK staff, or how is it going to be presented?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that has yet to be determined. If there are specific questions about flooding issues, maybe it's possible that we would have somebody from Public Works attend. We have to wait and see. I don't know. In fact, I'm not sure we've received all of the information. Maybe Ms. Liu mentioned that and I didn't hear it, but once Public Works receives it, we'll be coordinating with them. They'll be doing their review. When we do something with peer review, the county hires the peer reviewer.
Right.
I heard that question come up, or that comment come up. And then when we have that information, we'll be able to share it. But it's going to take a little bit of time for the review to be done. In fact, I think we were informed that it would take at least a month for Public Works to be able to adequately review the information that gets submitted. So we will make sure that you have the information that you need. And if,
Okay.
and I can work with Public Works to make sure that we get those questions answered, whether they come to the hearing or not, I don't know yet. We'd have to wait and see.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have comments from the public still to come?
Mr. Chair, we do have a handful of speakers.
Okay,
Would you like to go to public comment now?
yes,
Okay, great.
I think so. Unless there's anybody else has anything to say, I don't see any hands up. So let's move to the public comment.
Okay, so I'm going to start again with Lynn Larson. Ms. Larson, if you're able to connect your audio. Can you hear us, Ms. Larson? I'll come back, Ms. Larson. I'll come back to you. We'll move on. Our next speaker will be Sharon Byrne, to be followed by Scott Smigel.
Good morning, Planning Commission. I'm Sharon Byrne with the Montecito Association, the Executive Director. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you this morning. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Police. You've echoed a lot of our concerns on this. It does feel a little bit like a bait and switch to the community. And thank you to Director Plowman for answering my questions last week on would the Montecito Planning Commission be part of the review. We've been given to understand it is the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission that is the decision maker. But we also feel that because this is in the coastal plain, the Montecito Planning Commission should be serving as advisory to the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission. So I'm really hoping we do get to see the data from Caltrans over to Public Works, that we do get an intensive hearing and review on it, and that you are allowed to make all the comments that you need to make going into the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission's decision-making process. Thank you. The community is extremely concerned about this, really wants to see a good resolution here, and we really appreciate the time and effort that's being put in on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to Scott Smigel, I do see Ms. Larson making an attempt, so I just want to kind of put out an alternative option before we go to our next speaker. Ms. Larson, if it's easier, you could always call the hearing room telephone, and I can put you on speakerphone for the commissioners. That number is 568-2092. Again, 568-2092. Or you can call our front desk and they can transfer you. The front desk number is 568-2000. So we'll go to our next speaker, and then perhaps Ms. Larson, if she's having trouble, can call in via telephone, and we can do it that way. So our next speaker is Scott Smigel.
Hello, this is Scott Smigel. I'm a resident of Montecito. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I will not bother with my extensive comments and questions because you've touched on many of them. I appreciate and understand the process, and I wanted to register my interest in the subject, and I echo what many of you have said regarding the opaque decision-making that seems to have happened despite decades of promises. And thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll look forward to the appropriate public notices.
Thank you, Scott.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that make sure that the commissioners received the 2 written comment letters that were received for this item from Bruce McKenzie and Jamie Brown.
So based on that, pardon me a second, having these comments to us, we don't ever read those letters publicly, do we?
Mr. Chair, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Villalobos.
So I'm sorry, I was going to make a comment. So, when we first moved to virtual meetings, that was part of our process. And we kind of modeled that after the board's procedures. But that has not been part of our process since at least, I think, 2 years, starting in July. We did it very briefly.
I see. Okay.
I mean, I can do whatever you'd like me to, but that.
No, actually, I think if the authors of the letters were present, they could speak. But I guess if they're not here, then we'll just let that go.
I'm here.
Okay, good.
This is Bruce McKenzie. I sent a letter, and I can recapitulate that letter, I suppose. I attended the famous Zoom meeting with Caltrans and flood control. And the first thing you have to understand is Caltrans takes the position that it is not in control of whether or not it builds the sound walls. It takes the position that the County of Santa Barbara has already dictated to Caltrans through the flood control that the sound walls will somehow inhibit the next debris flow. And all the discussion that they put forward was that their hands were tied, Caltrans's hands were tied, and they were simply following the dictates of flood control. Flood control was taking the position that they were indeed in control and that it had nothing to do with any of the procedures and practices that were outlined here earlier by the planner. And I am absolutely flabbergasted in a very positive way that once again, common sense and public input is being put back into our democracy, because I had the feeling that the whole thing was wired together behind closed doors and was going to happen without input from the public. And now I'm learning that it's going back to the way it should be. And I am very, very happy that we will have an opportunity to be heard as this thing goes forward, because they're playing a bait and switch thing where they're trying to talk about the mud flow, the debris flow as being the reason why they can't have the sound walls, yet they're using standards that have to do with water and flooding. Water and flooding can be controlled with floodgates. And Caltrans seemed to take that position during the Zoom meeting, but they were saying that they couldn't address the mud flow. So it's simply going to not build sound walls and let the mud, I don't know, do whatever the mud does. Anyway, I really appreciate having the opportunity to hear that we're going to go back to doing things the way I understood they were being done, which is in a public forum where people have an opportunity to be heard. Thank you very much.
Okay, David?
So I have not heard from Ms. Larson. If Ms. Larson is unable to call in, Mr. McKenzie would be our last speaker.
Okay. Mr. Pettit, do you have any comments? You've been waiting patiently to chime in, I thought, but maybe not. Nope.
Chair and commissioners, no, I don't have anything to add. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission has, but I believe that planning staff has summarized the process well, that there will be a public process in accordance with the county's procedures, and that the EIR that was prepared for the project will be reviewed at that time in compliance with the requirements of CEQA. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Yes, Commissioner Sanauer.
Yeah, thanks. I guess this is a query for Ms. Liu. Could you please frame where federal consistency, where does the federal or FEMA, whatever,
Yes.
come into this process? We've heard about the county, we've heard about Caltrans, we've heard about the county, but does federal, and where does it enter into the elements and components? Or I assume it does. Is that correct?
Yes.
So Commissioner Sinauer and Chair, I'm going to put a pause on that. I think we're starting to get into the details of the project. I think that would be a good question for us to come back with when we come back for conceptual review. That's a great question, but I think we need to put a pause on that and come back.
Well, there's an easy answer to that, Jeff. And so that's the data that's been provided, and county's going to be looking at it. So Donna, they have a major role. You know, there's no question.
We don't need to, I thought it was a simple question. I apologize. I didn't think it had any. Anyway, that's fine. Our beloved secretary has put it in perspective, and I will honor that. And it seemed like A question similar to all that had been asked prior. I take no offense, and we'll just set that aside. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Ms. Keller, are you going to be as polite or go right ahead?
I was just amused, and I would like to point out the initials that beloved secretary stand for, and I hope that is not the case. Anyway, all I wanted to say is that given what Mr. McKenzie said about flood control versus Caltrans, I would like to make the request, I think on behalf of the commission, that when we do come toward this conceptual review, that the agencies not only that those agencies are present, because it sounds like we may have questions for them. And so if we can anticipate this by making sure that flood control is there and whatever other agencies might have had a hand or an input on the decision, it would be very valuable for us to have everybody in the room at the time. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, I think back to earlier comments were made was that there has been impact all up and down the coast that this freeway has been subject to by the flooding. And even though ours was the strongest, it doesn't mean that Santa Monica Creek or other areas in Carpinteria or Santa Barbara might not have similar outcomes depending on the severity of a storm. Anyway, I think we've skirted the issue well enough, put our complaints and otherwise our comments out there, Jeff, despite what you, hopefully it fits your tight analysis of what we could and couldn't say, but we may have, Brian didn't stop us, so I guess we're okay. Where do we go from here? We ready for adjournment or we have more to do?
Chair Puliche and commissioners, thank you. I think we're complete with this item. I did just want to put a reminder that we did set a special hearing for April 13th.
Yes.
To just make those findings. And then I will be reviewing the minutes from this meeting in its entirety to make sure there's some strike through. And I won't be labeled as the beloved secretary with a BS degree. So I really appreciate all the support and feedback we received today. But I think that concludes our meeting for today.
I think you need to put a cake recipe in there, Jeff.
All right. So I think we're complete, and without further ado, we'll close the meeting. Bye-bye.